All right, so yeah, for the ones that were here yesterday and listened to Despina Spanu, she rabbled off a lot of, the European Commission initiatives, a lot of legislations and acts that came out, and we're talking about NIS2. She finished with, okay, now it's the time to implement and protect. So I am looking forward to discussing NIS2 transposition into member state legislation, and then also the implementation actually that the entities have to do with my over there, Liudas Ališauskas, for the Director of National Cybersecurity Center in the Ministry of Defense in Lithuania. Glad that you're here sharing your experience with us, how it is in Lithuania right now. Then next to me, Peter Sund. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Finnish Cybersecurity Cluster and can share his experience from Finland. Then we have Florian Pennings. He's the Director of European Cybersecurity Policy, very much a nerd in all the EU legislation, so very happy that you are here and go into the nitty-gritty with us. And then we have Luigi Rebuffi. He's the Secretary General at the European Cybersecurity Organization, working, of course, with a lot of the companies that are affected, with the ECSOs. So looking forward to hearing from you some of the experience from the cybersecurity community that need to implement the legislation. So just a small recap of the NIS2. It's for implementing security. What was so new about it? Well, we actually broadened the scope. There's a lot more entities that are now, that need to implement security measures. And we're now at the time 5 months out in the transposition kind of timeline, where there's the deadline coming up for the member states where they should have transposed it into national law and the implementation should start. So that's why we're asking the question, to what extent will the newly affected organizations then actually embrace NIS2? And I want to start with, why should they? Right, so maybe we need to make it interesting. And I would like to ask you, Liudas, from your experience in Lithuania, what's your pitch that you're giving when newly affected entities come to you and say, what is NIS2? What do we have to do?
We reply as usually, you must be resilient as of today. Actually, we are lucky ones. Yesterday, Lithuania's parliament, they voted for the new cybersecurity law. NIS2 have been transferred, so 99 positive votes and two neutral. So we are moving, but still a second voting will be in 2 weeks. However, the transferring NIS2 into a new version of cybersecurity law has been quite interesting journey. And it was done not in the vacuum, not in the ministry, as the Lithuania ministry is policymakers. So we had a lot of long, harsh, tough discussions with the private business, with the public sector. So that was a lot of discussions. But at the end of the day, coming back to your question, how we are pitching, actually we all see, and especially in Lithuania, how active those threats become, what kind of effects they manage to do. So this is this type of environment is one picture. So for mature companies, nothing to pitch. They implement risk mitigation measures without sticks or NIS2, just to protect their business. And second pitching was very warm and natural discussions. Why some entities or companies are picked to be a subject for this new regulation, explained in Lithuania as well. Because these companies and services are really important to national security, to stability, to national functions. So congratulations, you have developed wonderful business, very important business, whether it's internet service providers, whether it's energy, water, all type interconnected services. So you became big enough, important enough for country. Thus, you must be resilient. So if your services break, it's not about lawyers only, it's a chain reaction. Something will happen bad in Lithuania for your employees, for citizens, and so on and so forth. So this pitching, I believe and feel that reached some of companies. And of course, the world is as it is. Sometimes we still observe that some companies try to save, not invest enough. Money is first, then responsibility and maturity and even philosophy. So we have, I guess you have as well, nothing new. So once again, a lot of discussions. We have already passed one voting. And we are fast moving to the easiest part of all this process, implementation. So that will be really interesting. And in Lithuania, National Cybersecurity Center is the only one responsible for implementation. So it will be a nice upcoming 2 years. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I think looking into implementation, we heard, I think this morning, someone say, yeah, in the legislation, it represents actually old times, and we had a whole theme talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and actually, you know, the NIS2 is from before that kind of core time where we have now LLMs, etc. So, Florian, you follow the whole range of regulations that we see, and with NIS2 now being implemented, do you think it will have actually the effect that we were looking for, or is it designed in a way that, yeah, it is too old and is not going to have the security effect that we were aiming for?
It's not too old. It still needs to be transposed, right? So let's create the evidence after the transposition in October. And I do also want to give a shout out to the organizers here for putting NIS2 also in the center of many of the discussions we had, because I do think this is the piece of regulation where it becomes real. Yes, it was developed and written in 2020. I think December 2020 it came out, so that's a long time ago. If you look at where we were then, this is in the middle of the pandemic. After that, we saw an increase of cyber attacks. We've seen the war of aggression against Ukraine, Middle East, and add on and on and on. So yes, the threat landscape is different now, but the regulation is needed, and it just takes time. Regulation takes time. So I want to say a couple of things about that. So if you really think about the NIS2, it's a great example where you sometimes feel a little bit that it's always about, so industry, what are you going to do? And what I really enjoyed today and yesterday as well, there were also discussions, so NCSCs, what are you going to do? Because if you think about it, this is a contract between the entities in scope as well as the governments that need to invest more as well. And this is very important. It's not only us that are going to invest as industry, but it's also the NCSCs. And I think that's very relevant to identify as a common objective. And then you can start identifying, hey, where do we see things differently? Obviously, we as a Microsoft look at this from a harmonization point of view. And NIS2 is an excellent way to start investing in organization and entities and upgrade the cybersecurity risk measures. But then we need some more clarity. So also there, European Commission was here yesterday, expressed that I heard that by June they hope to share a little bit more details about what are significant incidents, what are cybersecurity risk measures, and again, yes, I'm a bit nerdy on this stuff, so forgive me, but that's really what we need to know as companies to prepare ourselves for the details. And then the last thing I really want to express here is that it's not too old. Cybersecurity is global. This is a regional legislation. Even though it hits the EU, which is 27 member states, it will have an impact for the other regions as well. And we see that because we see colleagues from the US here. It still is relevant. There was one person that I met over the last 2 days that even talked about NIS3. I hope we don't open that discussion yet. Let's first do NIS2, create evidence and evaluate that in 1 or 2 years' time. But that will be my opening remarks. Thanks.
Okay, great. I think that was good to establish, to actually just give the relevance while we're now talking about a bit more in detail. So yes, it's still relevant, and we want to do it, and we see the different member states now. You know, Belgium has already passed. Germany this week had a hearing with 40 associations, going through even a slide list of like, yes, this we will do, no to this, yes, we will do. So what was the transposition experience? Luigi, I know that your organization follows all the member states. Can you tell us who's forerunner, who do you think is doing a good job, and also maybe increasing the clarity and making it possible to implement fast? And maybe who's behind?
Well, good morning, Gore. Yeah, good afternoon. So, yeah, indeed, ECSO is tracking the NIS2 implementation. We have a working group which is now leveraging upon 500 CISOs all across Europe and contact with national public administration, which are also our members. So we managed to develop a number, to have a number of use cases for implementing organizations, overview of transposition, so somehow this top-down view from different member states and the CISO communities. And also we had a survey with 180 answers from companies. So that's quite start to be something interesting. And as Julia was saying, there are differences where from the countries, we have seen the problems with the countries where there is some lack of communication between member states about the implementation timeline, what are the changes compared to the text, what are the real scope, and how to verify that the transposition will be compliant with regards to the security requirements. So a lot of questions. And when you see, for instance, that countries like Netherlands, they said they are not doing the implementation by the deadline of the 17th October. You mentioned Belgium and Croatia that already have implemented NIS2, and other countries like Austria and Poland, they have a public consultation, but they think that likely will be on time. For the other countries, they have rather looking at the deadline, they're already thinking what is the period they will allow to effective implementation. Like France, apparently they will allow for up to 3 years of transition period for the companies, while other countries will start inspection only after 1 year. So there are different ways. Also talking about standards, certain countries, they say we will apply ISO 27000 standards as recommended framework. In other countries, they prefer to be standard agnostic or use a developed framework developed by national supervisory authority, like the Belgium. The scope, also what is the scope of the sectors should be exactly the one which is indicated in the directive or should be expanded, like in Croatia, looking more for a military sector, for education. Czech Republic is military sector, Poland for mineral extraction and fuel. So, and at last also, how much you will be strict on the reporting, and Czech companies will need to report beyond significant incidents. So we try to give this panorama, to understand this panorama, which is still very, very different in the countries.
Okay, maybe then moving to Finland, because they weren't named yet. Where are you at in Finland? And from your viewpoint, working with the government, were there tough discussions? And what was your process?
Well, yeah, thank you. Maybe I should say that in Finland...
I think the mic is not on.
All right, we change. It's on. But all right. Concerning Finland, luckily we were also one of the member states who had a proactive approach in the beginning, so the sort of transposition was initiated very early on, but it's not very fast, of course. One issue that sort of made it a little bit slower in the end was the fact that we also had a change of government in between. So that took a little bit more time to sort of get everything reorganized again. But despite the fact, for example, the national transposition law, the bill is already in our parliament at the moment. However, we just learned last week that there are certain elements there that it will go to our constitutional committee, which is a particular committee in our legal tradition, because we don't have a constitutional court. So that will take a little bit more time. We are still positive that we'll make it by the deadline. But of course, it means that that essentially actors who will have to create the compliance for themselves will really not have a lot of sort of time to maneuver. Of course, government authorities, for example, we have colleagues here who represent an agency called Traficom, which is the home of the National Cybersecurity Center, that is the coordinating body for the sectoral authorities, that we will have 8 of them to sort of have the oversight for various sectors. And they of course understand that it can't be done overnight. But we have also, for example, as an industry, we represent the cybersecurity industry that is operating in Finland. We created a national guideline to sort of help all the actors who are part of the scope to already take forward movement, so that they know what they should start with, how they create the, for example, the risk assessment and risk treatment processes, cybersecurity governance model, and so on and so on. How they calculate, for example, costs and what are the sort of low-hanging fruits and things like that. What we included there. We've had very positive cooperation all in all. I think it's a little bit like maybe more common than rare in Finland, that for example in this particular case, for example our organization, the telecoms actors plus our confederation of Finnish industries, we were all invited to as part of the preparatory working group on drafting the transposition, so it was rather positive. But still, I mean, even creating the draft, when we got the first draft, just us only, we submitted 8 pages of sort of wish list. That means 18 different arguments that should be maybe corrected in the first draft. We really rarely do this extensive, but because this is important to get it precisely right.
And what was maybe one of the examples where you think there was improvements?
Maybe an example would be, for example, the responsibility for the senior management of organizations, on how it is really drafted, because the fact is that EU regulation, as we all know, the sort of legal tradition, it affects national regulation, and our corporate law in Finland is shaped slightly in a different way. So when the NIS2 is coming, it actually changes the interpretation and the factual legal state of corporate law nationally. So we wanted to get, for example, that precisely right, that it is how it is intended in the directive, so that there wouldn't be sort of misunderstanding that who are the ones actually in which roles who might be held responsible if they, for example, do not take their responsibilities seriously enough. But all in all, I think all the entities, there was like 117 different organizations who contributed to the draft. So it has been quite a lot of work, but it looks good now. Really, we got most of our wish list also included. So
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I think, so one of the things is that it was supposed to harmonize, but what we're hearing now is there is going to be quite some differences in the member state level. And also I find that there was a lot of creativity when it comes to countries coming up with standards that are simplified. I think Belgium, they are trying to call them sci-fun. I don't know how fun it is actually going to be to implement that. How is that in Lithuania? Did you come up with creative incentives to help entities to move into implementation, maybe even now before, right? I mean, we don't have to wait until the legislation is passed.
Good question. Actually, in Lithuania, we have quite successfully implemented all requirements from NIS2. So actually, there are differences, but not big difference. We used to have mitigation measures, so operational technology requirements for subjects, so for entities. Already, coming back to your question, this time we agreed to stick to one of international standards, and by the way, we stick or align with NIS2. Currently, they provided NIS2 guideline to European Commission, and they will transfer that into recommendations. And that's it. So and actually currently we had a little bit customized, good-looking, in some places too heavy requirements or mitigation measures. So we degrade or minimize a little bit, not much, sticking with the standards. We know Belgium framework actually have been inspired and used a lot, the approach. They have like measures for 4 types of companies by size. We use only 2, and that's the way. Why? I had once again quite windy discussions. So we've been in a position that we need to reduce a little bit requirements. And the reason is all incidents that National Cybersecurity Center have been involved in last year. Of course, as we have APTs, all that stuff, but almost all incidents happen because of lack of hygiene, lack of standards. And those entities who already has implemented or comply against 27001 will probably comply against all new requirements that will be issued in the countries. I'm a strong believer in that. So to wrap up, came up with or stick to the standards. NISA's guidelines is based on 27 plus some industrial standard, but no magic, nothing too heavy. And as of today, these are, and it's very important. We speak about standard. It should not be like a challenge for entity. These are measures, standard measures to become standard resilient organization to ensure that your services and products are resilient and you can ensure that your business continuity. This is standard. And once again, we really believe, and during the dialogues and discussions with member states, the idea is probably the same. Not to invent something special, but to stick to the standards. You can not call that this is standard, but that's the way. And that would be important. We discussed a lot with challenges. So if the entity provides services in many member state countries, so what then? So if all member states has more or less the same requirements, it would be easier for entities to comply with, to be resilient, to be like a strong nut, heavy nut for opponents to disrupt their businesses. So standard.
I think there's a very good link to the conversations we had yesterday as well, with which I find talking about European companies, but in a way, yeah, you're based in smaller companies are mostly based out of one country, and then they look at the process there and the standards there, and if they then want to make business in another EU country, that is, of course, maybe one of the challenges. So I think, it's good to be transparent about what are you expecting, and maybe there should be more in different languages as well, so the process is easier to follow. I will open for questions soon, so if you have any, prepare them, and we'll move over now to, of course, like you said, Florian, governments also need to do more. On the one hand, actually implement these basic standards themselves, at least on the national and the regional level. The local level is also seems to be more of a it was a recommendation from EU level. In Germany, for example, we decided now, unfortunately, to leave it up and leave it open. What are you mostly excited about to see when you're coming to work now and you're doing incident reporting, etc., maybe as a company that is affected? What do you expect that NIS2 can do in public-private partnership? Because they're going to get a lot more information, right? And you also have a lot of information, you do cyber threat reports, etc. Do you expect that there's going to be an improvement in the relationship
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, governments are already doing a lot. Just to they do a lot. But we also see in discussions that we're having that there is a challenge about, do we have enough resources, enough skilled people? We just came out of a conversation also about the NIS and about incident reporting, where one of the questions really remains, where Microsoft are going to share information, maybe about an incident, maybe about a near miss, because that's a voluntary mechanism. Maybe it's another company. We're reporting to an organization where you might have 10 people or 100 people, depending on the size of the member state. Are they able to understand everything that we are providing? Because it's a lot of services, a lot of products that are going to be potentially affected by that reporting. That's a very important thing. Let that sink in. In one country, we heard 12,000 new entities might be impacted, and that's just one. So that's a different way of thinking that requires a bit of a paradigm shift, I think, as well. If you then come back to us as Microsoft, yes, we will be impacted throughout all 27 member states. We are there to support and to share. And even there, we face our challenges, right? Who do we approach when we have something that kind of sits in between? We'll get requests as well. I like, by the way, I just wanted to mention one thing, because you referred a little bit to standards. Standards in relation to NIS2 might be interesting to think about. How do you report? Are there reporting standards that with NIST and CISA and now the cooperation with ENISA? That's great. But there's also a little bit of the other side, and we're not talking about the Cyber Resilience Act here. This is about NIS2, but there's going to be a lot of standard development in that space, and that will push down a lot of opportunities and also a lot of availability, I think, from the standard community. If we're opening up this discussion related to NIS2, please invest in that, because what we do see that the industry is actively participating in these discussions, and sometimes on the government side is a bit catch up, not because they are not interested, but again, where does this lie? How is that implemented? Again, brings us back to the implementation question: how much resources, how much do you have? So I'm really enthusiastic. I do think that you need to have a clear plan. What do you address first? Focus on harmonization all the time. That for us is the most important part. Knowing very well, and I'm happy that Peter is here to talk about that side from Finland and Liudas from Lithuania, because that's an easy discussion, right? Harmonization, of course, everybody agrees. The details come when it's the smaller organization. Am I in scope? Am I out scope? We're getting a lot of those questions as Microsoft already from our customers in the ecosystems, in every country in the EU. And then often we have to say, well, we interpret it like this, right? We're not your compliance officer, far from it. We can help, we can suggest, but talk to the regulator. And then sometimes we connect one another, and then we see the regulator is responsive, but they also say, oh, we don't know yet. So then you have a common problem. And that's not a problem. It's an opportunity to sit down and to clarify. So there are so many moving pieces that you need to start prioritizing. And I also think that if you look at, and Luigi made a really good comment, that some of the countries have already expressed openly, we're probably not going to make the transposition. I think we're kind of realizing here in these last 2 days that that's probably going to be reality. I also understood that from the Commission there's going to be a little bit leeway there. Again, I'm not talking on their behalf, but which I think is reasonable here, as long as the intention is there, and you have those discussions, and those discussions should take place ASAP, because even though we're looking at 17 October, it's not about 17 October, the deadline. It's about doing it now and sitting down and creating clarity. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Are there any questions already? Okay, I will.
Maybe not a question, but take on what Florian just mentioned. Yeah, it is like it is that the national regulators, they have to do a lot, and they are doing a lot. But it's not like we discussed earlier on. The scope issue is also because it is impacting a large quantity of various agencies themselves, which also consume some resources. For example, in Finland, the public entities who are part of the scope, at minimum, would be roughly like 5% of all the actors in scope. And we estimate, for example, in the case of Finland, that there will be maybe maximum up to 5,000 companies or private actors who will be part of the scope. We're a member state of 5.5 million people. In Germany, they seem to guesstimate that it will be.
Well, we have tens of thousands of.
Yeah, that there might be like 30,000 or something, but I don't know. This is, like Florian said, it's much of it's really about the sort of national level, because if I compare 30,000 to 5,000 and compare at the same time the amount of companies in each country, there is a 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold more companies in general in Germany. So I don't know, maybe in Finland we have more critical entities.
Yeah, well, I think
it
is an important point, because coming from we're all in the security industry, and we know how important it is to collaborate and to be clear and why you should do these measures, but that's not the case necessarily for companies that are now newly, have to deal with this. Yeah, that's why we see tools come out where you click your way through, but it is a risk that it becomes more of a compliance check thing instead of actually living it as a core and understanding why it is beneficial and how to do that. And that already now the barrier of assessing what do I need to do becomes already a huge cost for some companies. I want to ask you, in Liudas in Lithuania, how do you, of course, in your administration now, you need to implement as well in the public sector. What is the process and internal discussions there? And are you also going beyond, for example, the recommendations for the public sector? Because we learned now, public sector will hold also very sensitive information and needs to be ready and capable to respond. So what are some of the things that you're planning to do to secure the public sector and also increase maybe the skill set that is there?
Yeah, Lithuania, actually, we still don't know the exact number of all entities of the identification process. Currently, we call our clients, it's critical infrastructure, national databases and registries. We work with near 600 companies currently. We predict that it will be the scope will expand about 3,000, 3,500 still. Do not have answers, as probably all member states do not have answers yet. So Part of public administration sector is already our clients doing. It could be better, as always. Not everything is green if we speak about compliance. And the scope extends what will be our new clients. It will be vicinities. We have 60 and all entities under these vicinities, like medicine centers and schools. So what we and how we as a government help them. So we started last year the inventory of how you comply against our current requirements and ISO 27. So a lot of gaps, I'll be honest. That's why our opponents succeed quite often with all kind of attacks. So we have some of funds to help those entities to build up required resilience, and we have like a key requirements that should be in place just to achieve like golden rule, operators rule, with a 20% of investment you can achieve 80% of effect, so we are going that way. And about skills, we have challenge with the skills as well. So actually last year started with online courses, launched online courses for some groups. So it's cybersecurity, industrial control systems, IT function. And that's an important point when we talk a lot about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, actually, we speak about healthy IT function, because all incidents happen because of IT function malfunctioning, just like that. So for IT people, not crazy stuff, just a minimal. And for normal people, not non-IT people. And this year launched like a course for entities managers or CEOs, you name it, because good things start from awareness and understanding of decisions. So this course we call is doomed for success. It's not for, we all know, yes, that CEOs cannot concentrate too long and all this stuff. So we evaluate and this course is not about payload intrusions, SQL injections. It's about risk management. So every head is responsible for business continuity, for health security, and for cyber threat risk management as well. And if we take in comparison to organizations A, B, if there is awareness and understanding of cyber threat risks, the company performs quite well. If there is no, and it's a classic AT, I don't understand. It costs, no, I will not invest. So we have incidents. So I came up with the idea and good feedback. We already trained up to 2,000 decision makers. So developing ourselves, and we have had really tough discussions, like some competency building companies and well-known companies. They said, probably you have had that. Hey, don't worry, give us money, we will train as many people as you want. And it sounds good, but it costs a lot. And probably even the healthiest countries, we have limit for resources. So we came up with the idea, maybe we will create not so good and qualified courses, but it will be the beginning, just for the beginning. So that are just a few examples how we are trying to solve the same problems that we all have.
Thanks. I mean, what I think what we have heard so far is a couple of success factors that we, if we do that more, then NIS2 might actually as a core have the security implication that we want. One was we need to also talk to CEOs. It's about the business risk, you know, it's not about the security, but actually you are securing your business and you're important. Then I heard clarity in what needs to be done, maybe tools, and then increasing capabilities in the government and skill set. Are there any incentives to add, Luigi, that you find in your conversations where you say, yeah, this is great, and then that helps us move along in the implementation process?
Well, I don't know if we can call it incentives, but what is coming out in our survey with 180 companies say that how they go for an implementation is to use some best practices, what they call best practices, which is leveraging, for instance, existing certification or focus on awareness and training, even beyond the NIS scope, so the skills issue, to have, of course, a comprehensive risk assessment, cooperate with national supervisory authorities. And this is really something which will come over and over, of course, secured by design. But what the companies say, especially the smallest one, because the largest one, it's relatively easy for them, but the smaller one, they ask for, they say 90% of the companies say that they want to have access to guideline templates or other supporting material to facilitate the compliancy. So that's really coming from the national supervisory authority. And today they say our vote, if we can give a vote to our cooperation, is something like 66, well, very precise, 66 against 10 as a vote for the present cooperation. But they ask for more, they really asked and the 57% organization already participated in awareness raising with these authorities, but they really asked member states to clearly communicate the obligation for the different entities, create public awareness, raising campaigns, inform the practicalities. So this public-private cooperation in the implementation is really something which is heavily demanded. Probably, okay, that's we could say about the penalties or the incentives. I think that implementing the penalty, I was discussing just after the previous talk we had, implementing penalties is extremely difficult. It will take forever. Providing incentives is much, much better.
Yeah, maybe this is not a continuation directly on the incentives. Of course, also at national level in Finland, we did have also financial incentives to improve the cybersecurity maturity in companies. But we did it as a pilot, essentially, and this was before the NIS2 requirements were really there, or the transposition was going on. But nevertheless, very positive lessons learned from that. So whatever the incentives are, they should be at least investigated, possibly, if not maximized, at least some kind of optimization, whatever can be done. But furthermore, if you don't mind, I would like to maybe point out another issue. It goes a little bit beyond of what we have as our topic of discussion, but I would like to also point it out for you, because we have so many high-level cybersecurity and security experts here in the room. The NIS2 warrants also for the national cybersecurity strategies. And as this is the case, what I would really hope all of us to do is to focus also to that what will be the contents of the cybersecurity strategies at member states level, possibly even compare them a little bit. And what I would like to do, or at least we will do, we will also compare it to what, for example, the US has done with their cybersecurity strategy, because I think we also need a little bit of strategic sort of common understanding of what is going on and where we focus our attention and our resources. And that it goes clearly beyond the regulation itself, but nevertheless, I think it's worth taking home.
I think that already kind of started maybe the last round that I would like to ask you. What do you like to see now up until October? What are specific next steps? What are you doing either maybe yourself or expecting from EU institutions or member state institutions up until October? Start with you, Florian.
Yeah, thanks. This is so we're in a phase now that it's we're all looking at October, but that's not again, as I said before, this is just a date. It's about constant investment. If you look at the NIS, bringing it back to the NIS2, in the NIS2 you see that Cyclone is it's where all the crisis cybersecurity coordination is then coordinated. You've got the CSER network in there, cooperation group, all these great mechanisms to cooperate. Fantastic. But there's one element always missing, and that's a structural cooperation with the industry. Now, that brings then the problem, how do you do that? Do you do that at an EU level with larger companies where you kind of discriminate towards the smaller companies? That scalability is a big issue. How do we do that? How do we get that there's enough balancing ongoing that also the smaller companies benefit from what's being discussed? I'll be the first one to acknowledge this, and that's what we also get as questions from our partners in the different member states. At the same time, if you then unfold a little bit of the cooperation, there's a lot ongoing. There are ISACs at the EU level where, again, you'll have an issue with scalability. Energy ISAC that you have, scalability is a question. Like, how do I get that small little provider in that little country to also join or at least benefit from the discussions? Question mark. I would love to see that being put a little bit more to the forefront, because I think that's also where it's a whole fabric. You're as weak as your weakest link. I think that's an open door, but it still is the case. And then the last thing that I want to address here is that the role of ENISA, we've talked about it in multiple panels and also in Chatham House environments, but they're growing. They're getting more resources. You can ask them more questions. They're not yet, or they're not an operational agency, but they're an expert organization. There are a lot of experts there. And that's really a call, both to industry as well as to the national cybersecurity centers. Don't over-ask, but come together, identify which questions, put them there, and start having this discussion. And that's not until October, but that's really for the coming European Commission's mandate and the European Parliament. It's the best moment to start these discussions at this time. Thanks.
Thank you.
What I would expect, and held already quite a lot of discussions with the colleagues, counterparts over the Europe. Once again, thank you, Anissa, very much for all you have done. We have ideas what you could do more. And I would like to pay attention that, for example, we share more or less the same challenges or problems. And every member state try to solve those problems, to build tooling, frameworks, and so on and so forth, quite working standalone. So we burn so much calories or efforts to build the same products. That's the idea, a little bit discussed, but what if we would put together all best our experts and to develop, for example, requirements framework, what has been done in Belgium. Maybe that framework could be applicable, and it really can be applicable. We should not be like a very specific member states, of course we are, but it could be one framework for ready for use for members. So to wrap up, a lot of space for efficiency and speed if we work together, not standalone. So.
Well, great. Luigi?
So let me say that there is one point that actually I would like to, well, you understood that we are having this survey and so on, which the study, like, which will come out in September, just before October. In a way that hopefully we will have some more information. But there is one point I would like to underline here, is the fact that we are waiting for the Commission for implementing acts. Implementing acts is something that usually is non-legislative act, which is laid down the rules for allowing uniform implementation across the Union. And this has been delayed. We are waiting already for 3 months, and it will take a certain time. So the question is how this will impact, really, even for those countries which have already implemented transpose the law. And this is a big question. We are still, for me, a big uncertainty that we ever had, but of course, it will take time. We have time. And not just, sorry to say the last words, I would say, this is regulation for me, and I'm so many years in Brussels. Regulation for me is not, well, is the law, without being the law, in the sense that, maybe because I'm Italian of origin, the point is that even you said about AI at the beginning, you know, you have something which is arriving, which change, which transform what you're doing at a certain moment is already different when the law comes out. The point is that regulation, for me, in my experience, as I said, is something which is absolutely needed, regulation, legislation, directive, to mature the society. So don't expect that the regulation is applied 100%. Just expect that the regulation is increasing the maturity of the community, of the society, improving progressively to reach a higher level of security. That's, for me, the role of the regulation. Sorry.
You have the last words.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think Luigi just pointed out maybe the point that I had in mind concerning the implementing acts, because I think I hope that we all probably agree that there wouldn't be a NIS2 in the near future. But like Luigi says, we will have, in a way, NIS 2.5, which means that we will get more legal guidance via the implementing acts, and they can be rather useful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, and that we discussed in very specific terms, like how can we make implementation successful. And thank you for Sebastian and team for getting us together.